Welcome to the
Hello.
Chronicles of Elyria live stream. I am Adam Maxwell. You guys might know me as Snipe Hunter. I'm the lead designer on Chronicles of Elyria, and I'm joined today by our world builder and designer Sozo,
Hi.
aka Miguel.
AKA Miguel.
So how's it going?
How's it going? This is exciting.
We
I
are
don't think
here
we've ever done this
to.
before.
No, we have literally never done this
No,
before.
this is fun.
We're here today to talk about the cool stuff, flora and fauna, plants and animals of the world. The things that honestly we never really get to talk about, which is kind of
They are my jam. I'll tell you what.
I actually considered doing an entire Q&A just on soil, just based on the amount of actual knowledge you've acquired at this point.
Don't tempt me. I'll do it.
But yeah, I figured that would be a dirty conversation. So.
A bit beneath us, maybe?
Yes, precisely.
Don't worry, this is going to be the rest of the stream, so buckle in.
We didn't want to get down in the mud with that.
Yeah.
So jokes aside, we've taken the questions out of your thread, and we have the top 20 here, because we generally don't actually get through all 20 in a stream. There were a hell of a lot more, so if we do find that we have some time, we're going to hit up the chat and ask you guys some questions, or actually either have you guys ask us some questions.
Yeah, we might answer them.
But in the meantime, I think we're probably just gonna get going.
We're just gonna, jump right in. So
yeah,
let's do it.
let me browse chat really quick. Yep, they're just talking about puns.
Someone made a good pun. He said, "I saw myself listening to all that." Concerning to hear. I'd say go to the doctor.
Yeah, you
That's
know
not
what? See
normal.
somebody about that. It is a good pun though.
It's a good one. I like it.
All right. So why don't we just start? We'll start with the top question. The top
Number
question was by West, and West. Was about to say he. I should not presume gender. West asked, "Will we have the ability to capture live animals? And if so, will they need to be unconscious to move? Will there be special wagons in which we can transport them? Will there be any limitations, size or otherwise, on the types of creatures that we can capture?" Those are some good questions.
Those are good questions. And I think we can say across the board, yes.
Yeah. All right. So moving on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so one by one, I mean, yes, you will absolutely have the ability to capture live animals.
Yeah.
That's not just for taming. For example, you might want to have, a classical sort of gladiatorial arena.
Right.
So you might want them to be wild and not tamed, and
Right.
so you still need a way to capture it.
Your torture dungeons, your regular dungeons.
Right. Plus all those troll mouse salamanders, you can't tame them, so somebody's got to catch them.
Right.
They will not necessarily need to be unconscious to move them. That's more of a concern about the type of animal you're moving, I think. Like, you would probably not really care about a troll mouse salamander.
Right.
I mean, it's in its cage, it's fine. But on the other hand, if you were like trying to catch and move a rabid otter bear,
Right.
you might want that one knocked out.
Likewise, not all traps are going to be traps that cause unconsciousness. Plenty of traps are, basic bait, switch, hits the lever, closes it behind them. They're just stuck in there.
Right.
If
or
they're
like
not
a classical snare.
right, exactly. So no, they don't all need to be unconscious.
What about special wagons?
There will be wagons. You will need something like a cage, certain tools to transport animals, and there will be special wagons that have cages on them, but you won't need them in order to actually transport them, but they do help.
And what about size limitations? Can I tame a kraken?
I would say no. I would say you should probably not try.
But I would need a cage wagon for that if I was.
Right. So what you need a really large cage. You just got to jam it in there. Could get a little gross, but
Yeah. So jokes aside, size is going to matter. You're not going to be able to tame anything that thinks
you heard it here, folks.
less than it, right? So yeah. Next question comes from Worthless Emu.
Worthful emu.
Yep. I disagree with the premise of your name, sir.
Yeah.
Or ma'am, as the case may be. Will it be possible to breed plants to improve them? For example, to create a strain of potatoes that yields more than other strains, and then to collect and sell the seeds to make a business of providing high-quality plant seeds to farmers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's sort of the idea, actually. Not the only idea, but yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big piece of why farming is considered a craft just like any other in our game, is that it has to have that same sort of range of progression, and space for competition, right? You guys need to be able to define your niche in that craft. and so strains are the way to do it in farming.
Yes.
You want to read the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3, Raindew asks, I'm quite interested in the underwater flora and fauna we may see in Elyria. There was concept art of a huge leviathan frozen in ice pictured once.
Oh yeah, that's a good picture.
What I would like to know is what types of animals, fish will we encounter on the seas, and are any of them tameable?
Oh, okay. So that's actually like 2 questions.
It's 2 questions.
I guess I'll answer the first one because it's going to be a letdown for people.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to tame fish, I don't think. Probably not ocean-going mammals either, not counting the otter bear.
Sure.
But like you're not going to be able to tame like dolphins or anything like that.
Sure.
That said, what kind of flora and fauna can we expect to see out there?
Fish, large mammals, whales, whale-like creatures. Not committing to whales yet, but among other things, good call out with the huge leviathan, maybe. Wait and see.
I can see that.
But it has the kinds of animals, the kinds of fish that would actually support fishing and economies based on fishing, which we've already pretty much confirmed by the fact that we have plenty of fishing villages and coastline cities. Like those would have to be supported by a large fishing trade.
Selly suggests the woolly whale, which I have to admit I'm actually kind of a fan of that
The
idea.
woolly whale?
Yeah.
Like a furry whale?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No, we have not answered that question yet, but you know what? It is on our list, so I'm not going to answer it yet either.
Yeah.
Talking to chat. Okay.
Number 4.
Yeah, we'll just move on, I guess. Gamia says, many people plan to take seeds or animals from one biome to the other to breed and grow them. I would like to know if they may have any possibility of success in their purpose, and what impact will this have on Illyrian ecology? That's actually a really good question.
Good question.
We've mentioned before that it's possible to transplant animal species, and that might have an effect on the ecosystem. The same thing is definitely true of plant life. The trick, though, is that you're going to have to reproduce the conditions that those plants grow in, right? So you can't just, take a tropical flower, right, and take it up to the taiga and just expect that it's going to grow there.
Right.
Chances are, in fact, it's going to die horribly in the cold, all alone.
All alone.
But on the other hand, you could take that plant and you could say, take it to a more temperate biome, and if you could figure out how to keep the area warm and moist, chances are it would grow.
Sure. The difficulty would be doing that for any sustained period of time, but ultimately that it adds value to the kinds of things that alchemists can accomplish.
Absolutely.
And what they can actually bring to an environment and to a group of people. Makes traveling a lot more enticing.
Right. Well, and another, yeah, exactly. And your comment about the alchemist is a really good one. So you may realize that the only reason this plant isn't growing, you can tell by the way that the plant is dying, that it might need something in the soil that doesn't exist where you are, right? If you could figure out a way to remediate that soil, to add that material back, then you could probably grow that plant there just fine. And an alchemist is absolutely your go-to profession to figure that kind of stuff out. This ground is too acidic. What can I do about that? Well, an alchemist will know the answer to that.
Or they'll try and figure it out.
Right, to be fair.
What you were saying earlier, though, is a good point. You're going to find it hard, next to impossible, to make a species that is used to a different temperature climate survive in another.
Absolutely. On the other hand, some cases you're going to be able to move a plant and it's just going to love where you moved it to,
right,
because all of the challenges of each biome don't exist, but it has all the right conditions to grow.
Exactly.
In which case, it may end up being a sort of invasive species.
Yeah.
And so, you may end up with like the problem that America has with kudzu, for example.
Right.
If you're not careful. And we won't stop that from happening, so careful.
Careful. But then you've got a whole industry of like weed whackers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
All right, next question. Atlas Forgiven. Will there be man-eating plants?
That is a good question.
That's a great question.
So will there be man-eating plants, Sozo?
Next question.
Moving on.
Markov asks, will we be able to grow plants indoors in pots and greenhouses? Well, we were kind of touching on that 2 questions ago. We will not have greenhouses. Or rather, you won't have greenhouses.
Yeah, that's actually a late technology. To get the right kind of glass and stuff, it's probably just not going to happen anytime soon.
And that's pertains to the comment I made about making it difficult for a plant from another climate to survive in one that's completely opposite. There's no greenhouse technology, so there's not really any good way to make that happen. As for pots, did we settle on that?
Well, yeah, so the issue we have with pots is actually, it's kind of silly from a RP standpoint, but from a mechanical standpoint, it matters. We don't necessarily want you to transplant soil from one biome to another.
Right.
Because part of the challenge of growing plants is what we mentioned earlier, is treating the soil to make it possible for those plants to grow nearby. So pots are a challenge to us then, because in effect, you could put soil in a pot and then move the pot, and then haven't you just transplanted soil?
Right.
And so I can't actually say, yes, there will be potted plants. However, yeah, there's probably going to be potted plants. I mean, realistically, it's not a new technology, right? It's pretty fucking old.
Pot plant.
Right. So yeah.
A Nobel Prize, please.
I mean, realistically, yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll see that. We'll have to figure out the gameplay implications that we were just talking about,
right.
But that's a solvable problem. It just takes us, diverting the time and effort necessary to make it happen. So right. I would imagine that we will see potted plants, but I can't actually confirm.
Right. Atlas Forgiven asks again, what kind of flora will exist underground in the caves of the Hrothi? Well,
does fungi count as flora?
I think no.
It really doesn't, right?
Fungi, probably it's its own thing.
Yep, though
I might also technically classify as flora, but fungi is weird. I mean, fungi is basically a bunch of other organisms making up one large organism.
Right. Yeah. Well, and they're not exactly plants, right? Like they're a whole different kingdom. They're a whole different kingdom.
Oh, let's see. Yep, it's fauna. Yep, exactly, because it's made of a bunch of organisms.
But that said, you will find a lot of
fungi.
Yeah, you will find a lot of things that don't require photosynthesis.
Yes, and bioluminescence.
Lots of bioluminescence, I would imagine. In fact, I've seen some concepts for things that are bioluminescent. They're pretty dope. I don't think those are going to be Hrothi specifically that I was looking at, though.
Fun fact behind the scenes, originally in the cave demo, I wanted to light everything with bioluminescence. We didn't.
Was that
it was a design call.
Okay.
We decided that for that specific area it didn't make any sense.
Sure.
But my first instinct was bioluminescent lanterns using like a bioluminescent mushroom.
Right, like in a glass.
It was a pine cone. I wanted to use a bioluminescent pine cone
nice.
Instead of a torch. I'm like, why not? We didn't do that.
I forgot about the bioluminescent pine cones too.
Yeah, right? Okay, next question.
Flora and fauna, this is from Sluris. Flora and fauna bring one thing to mind, genetics. How extensive will the genetic system be for flora and fauna? Will it be Mendelian inheritance or actual genetics? So that's a good question. So the answer at the broad level is it will be the same for flora and fauna that it is for the tribes of man. So one of the things that we've mentioned before is that we are doing things where you will inherit traits. Those traits can be dominant or recessive. Traits can skip a generation or even skip several generations and only resurface much later. And so, in some sense, we are doing a sort of classical model for inheritance, but we're also, in the background, distributing all of these traits across a series of, for lack of a better word, chromosomes. So we are also kind of dealing with genetics, but only really kind of.
Yeah.
It's more about approximating the feel of all of that stuff, of making sure that it can, of making sure that it can do what we need it to do, which is essentially allow you to selectively breed, allow traits to reappear when people have forgotten about them, and allow for things like mutation. And so the system will allow all of those things to happen, and it does so with a sort of abstraction of real world inheritance and genetics.
Yes. Skoda says, so minimal gene expression, gotcha.
Yep, exactly.
Gets it. Next question by Skilrus. Again, great questions. How many unique Illyrian flora and fauna are you designing per biome, percentage-wise? As much as any given biome needs in order to be interesting and complete.
Yeah, so some biomes are almost entirely, plants and animals that you would imagine exist on Earth, if not actually exist on Earth. But not every biome that's true for. In some biomes, the balance is actually swung the opposite way. The Harothi biome is a really good example of that, right? In an underground biome, here, you're basically going to get a lot of like slime and maybe some worms and stuff. That's not true in the Harothi land. It's significantly more diverse than that.
Right.
And that requires a high percentage of unique assets, of unique flora and fauna.
Right. There will be fairly exotic biomes. Percentage-wise, I don't know. I would say... Yeah, did you see the thing about your phone password?
Yeah, amusingly, I did not enter it properly, so...
Not the first time.
Oh yeah, I did the second time, didn't I? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I was laughing, though, at Jack Jr.'s comment. You're the first person to call this out as a Westworld t-shirt.
Yeah.
I've been wearing this t-shirt for like 2 years now. I mean, not every... That would be gross, but...
Every day. Next question. By Skilrus.
Yeah, I'll go for it.
Okay.
What, in general, are your design guidelines for developing new plants and animals? Science? Rule of cool? Plausibility? Evolution?
All of the above. All of the above, but I tend to approach any given animal with science in mind first, and then rule of cool. And, I mean, if you're talking science, then you're talking plausibility. And if you're talking evolution, you're talking plausibility.
Yeah, that's
I would say science, plausibility, and evolution, those are the same thing.
That's fair.
You're not going to have lack of plausibility, but science.
I would also say that, generally speaking, it's never one or the other. Like, it's never like, oh, this is cool, so we're doing it.
Right.
It's even when it's like, oh, this is cool, we should do it, then it's, well, how does that make sense in the world?
Right. Like,
right.
The Terragwin was a good example of that. Something that was conceptualized versus a cool idea. Shout out to Eddie. And then we worked to make it actually fit in with the like logical consistency of the world, and for it to actually make sense within the rules of Elyria.
Right. And yeah, and part of that, was finding the right niche for it to occupy.
Right.
Right. So, we have this cool idea, but is there really a place for that kind of predator in the biome that it would be in? And,
right.
In that case, obviously, yes, but
right.
But that's not always true. And so, some really good ideas kind of sit in the background until the right place for them becomes evident, because there isn't really a plausible reason for them to exist,
Right. How are we doing? We're doing really good, and we have how many questions?
We actually have plenty of time. We're about halfway.
Yeah,
through
so I'll go into a little bit more detail. For example, the flower cup porcupine. That was designed. My approach was, okay, well, there needs to be a secondary consumer in this biome, and I started thinking about what kind of traits secondary consumers generally have in a colder environment. And I looked at the kind of genetic adaptations that both plants and animals have in order to adapt to the cold and the biting wind and so on and so forth, and basically synthesized some of those traits into what we have as the flower cup porcupine. And I made sure that it made sense in regards to like the area it was in and the kind of like evolutionary timeline that would have led to it being the way it is.
Right.
If that makes sense. And so like that's one that was largely science. It was just, let's think of all the necessities that would dictate this creature's existence within the rule set of Elyria. As opposed to, like I said, the Terragruin or even maybe the otter bear, where I was like, you know, it's cute, otters and bears. I want to see some sort of combination of them, and I was just like, damn.
We were going to see the octopotamus.
The octopotamus, which is a hippopotamus octopi.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound cute. It sounds terrifying. What is that? Is that an actual creature someone drew?
That was up on the whiteboard when I interviewed here.
Oh,
Yep.
Jason drew that. Death, as you all know him.
I absolutely laughed when I saw it.
Yeah.
I see what you guys
That's
did
what
there.
happens. That was pre iPad for Jason.
Yeah, now he does everything painting.
Now he does everything, on his iPad, but you give that man a Sharpie and it is, you know what's up.
All right, so I think we're on question number 11 now by Gutsa1, who
Yep.
says, are you able to share any examples of flora and fauna from exotic biomes like those or unlike those of Earth? Something like Minecraft's mushroom forest. So we didn't bring any like concept art or anything to share with you guys this time. Partly because, when we haven't actually announced an animal, there's like plans for how we might want to do that or how we want to introduce them via lore and stuff like that. But also just because we didn't really ask any of the artists if we could show off their work. But we do have some stories we could probably tell.
Sure.
I mean, what's your favorite flora or fauna that's not, from Earth?
That's not from Earth. I think I've got a couple, but I will name drop one. The axolid.
The axolid. Oh, the axolid is cool.
The axolid is easily one of our most exotic, if not the most exotic creatures. And that's all. That's all I have to say on that. It's just a name drop.
They're a predator. We can say that.
They're a predator. Yeah, we can say that too.
They're a really cool predator.
They're a predator, and I will spell it in chat for you later.
What's of the ones that people know, what's your favorite?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm an otter bear fan.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of the otter bear.
Cute and dangerous is always a great combination.
I remember how excited I was when we had a physical model of the flower cup porcupine, and I was placing some in a scene, and I don't know what the scene was for, but I was placing it in a scene, and then I pressed play and I went to the spot that I thought they had been placed, and I couldn't find it. And I literally spent the next half an hour looking for these flower cup porcupines, and I was convinced that it was a problem with Unreal Editor, that there was some issue that was causing them not to load.
Up, yeah.
That they just weren't actually being successfully placed in the level. Until I looked, finally, out of desperation, I took one of the flower cup porcupine and levitated it into the air, just so that I would know for a fact where the rest of them were. And so I saw, I'm like, okay, and there they were, hidden exactly as they are designed to be, perfectly amongst this field of flowers. And I remember that was a really happy moment for me, because I was like, they worked exactly as I wanted them to. It succeeded. It was a success. And that was I was very happy about that. So the flower cup porcupines certainly have a special place in my heart.
Indeed, I like them too.
Yeah.
Actually, all of our hybrids were actually like really well thought out. So I have to admit, when I first looked at Chronicles of Elyria, I was an early backer.
Yep.
And I sort of get a sense of the game over the next like year. I was kind of I don't want to say like skeptical, but maybe skeptical.
Yeah. Not to put too fine a point on it, but skeptical.
Well, right. Well, because like you know, hybrids can be, for lack of a better word, they can be dumb,
Right.
Like you've seen it. You see it in other MMOs. Usually, it's like as a pet or a mount or something, and they're like just silly, right? But like because all of ours are thought out and integrated into their ecosystem, I never feel that way at all, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, "Oh, it's an otter bear," and people are like, "Oh, it's an otter and a bear. It's like an owl bear," and I'm like, "No, actually, it's pretty fucking dope. Like it's an otter and a bear, and imagine how terrible that really is,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's cool that that element is there, right?
Yeah. A component of believability, which I think is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about that verisimilitude over veracity thing, but it's important to remember that verisimilitude still has to seem true, right? Like if it doesn't, it just falls flat and it doesn't work. You know?
It's the difference between, let's say, an otter bear and a manticore.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Snake of a tail, head of a lion, body of a falcon. I don't know.
A raptor-rat, huh?
That's raptor-rat.
That's what
I'm
Adrian
gonna follow this
is.
link. Oh, it's a real thing. Yeah, I mean, listen,
poor little
I'll be
legs.
honest. I am the #1 advocate for rodents.
Gun dragons are terrible, Zero.
Gun dragons? Yeah, no, we're gonna have, oh, you mean the dragons? We do have dragons.
Dragons, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
oh, but
Absolutely.
not gun dragons,
Yeah.
but dragons. TM. Enter the gungeon. You're great. Don't sue us. But I am all for having as large a variety of small rodents and rodentia, mammalia in the game. And as you've probably noticed, looking over my biome specs, that I try and include a lot because I think they add believability to the world.
Absolutely.
I have been limited, obviously, because if it was up to me, we would have that adorable raptor rat and a billion others, and no other creatures would unfortunately be the result of that, which I don't want either. So
that's a meow, Neuro.
it's a meow.
You were saying an owl cat?
Oh yeah, a meow.
A meow, yeah.
Yeah, an owl cat, a meow. That's pretty good. What is that? A Pokemon? 6th generation?
Right, should be.
Yeah.
Like number 262.
Yeah.
All right, let's grab another question.
Sure. Next question. 12, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, from Atlas Forgiven, who says, will we find, that should not be declarative. Will we find fossils of past fauna and flora in the world that tell us stories of long things past? That's a really good question. We don't exactly have the kind of excavation system that you would use to find most fossils. However, I'm not going to rule out their appearance entirely because where they make sense for our world and our history, I can imagine that you would find them, like especially in deep caves. I mean, there's that frozen kraken thing. There's that.
Well, there's also the quote unquote unidentified skeleton in Titan's Step.
Absolutely.
In the cave.
Yep. And so yeah, I think the answer is a mixed. Yeah, you're not going to find them everywhere. There's not going to be a system that plants the world full of fossils.
Right. And there's not going to be a archaeology tree. This isn't what's the Egyptian MMO again? Was it
Tale in the Desert?
This isn't Tale in the Desert.
Yeah.
But it adds a layer of depth to the world building that is very valuable. Like, we want there to be stories told simply through the environment. Right. Environmental storytelling is huge.
Right. And Elyria as a world has a story that's independent, sort of the it's not really independent, that's not fair, but that is sufficiently disconnected from the story of the tribes of man that you have to tell it a different way, right? Like it's not enough to talk about, how the tribes formed or how the tribes became kingdoms or how those kingdoms became the modern kingdoms of today. You get an understanding of what Elyria is and what happened to it. And so a lot of those elements are going to have to be, writ large across the landscape itself. And things like fossils help that happen. And so that's why I can't rule them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Number 13. Ooh, this is a doozy.
Oh, yeah.
I think I got this one.
Right on, man.
Darius Sakmar, or Darius Akmar, asks, how many plant types are there going to be that can be used for herbal apothecary use? And can you use roots, leaves, stems, seeds, and so on for different medical uses? Edit. Clarification.
I like that the clarification is a paragraph.
It is a pair. It's a longer. This is... All right. There are about 391,000 species of vascular plants currently known to science, of which about 369,000 species, or 94%, are flowering plants, according to a report by the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, in the United Kingdom. Many of those have been found to have some sort of alchemical, herbal, or drug use. I wanted to know a rough ballpark of how many Elyria will have, and how extensive we'll be able to use the whole one. So that's actually the last question, one of the previous questions we had, which is how many plants will there be, by Skillerus. Shout out to Skillerus, my buddy. And we don't have that number, but to answer the previous question, absolutely various parts of the plants can and will be used to achieve different things.
Right.
There will be a limit to the number of components because obviously in real life it can be very, very, very I blanked.
Broad, numerous.
Granular. Granular is the word. Ignore my hand gestures. I don't know what that is, but it can be very granular, and we aren't going to necessarily get anything in regards to like gameplay benefits by having, 16 different parts of any given plant that you can use to do various small things. Ultimately, that's too much depth, but having those various uses is something that we actually...
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to put it. And I think it's worth calling out that that's actually a really critical component of the way alchemy and horticulture sort of work together. Right, so the whole trick of alchemy is figuring out what these ingredients can do when you use them in particular ways. But for that to be possible, you need to have a broad sort of pool of ingredients, which will come from the various pieces of plants that can be used after they're grown and harvested. And depending on the plants, there'll be more or less, just like Soza was saying. But generally speaking, most plants will have either more than one part or more than one way to use the useful part.
Right, and that has to do with the alchemy system in general. A given component can take on various properties depending on how you process it and how you treat it. There's basically, what was it, 4 steps?
Yeah.
Four main steps to actually a lot of systems, but alchemy in particular, there's basically 4 steps and 4 different ways that you could potentially introduce, 4 compounded.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You could treat one thing, then treat it a different way, and like order of operation, PEMDAS, I always say. Let's see. Well, we're on to the next page.
As far as like a rough ballpark, probably hundreds, but probably not thousands.
Probably not thousands, but that's, are we talking at launch, initial launch? Or are we talking just eventually?
Over time. There's 2 other continents that roughly the same size as the starter continent, at least. So
Zach is a machine.
Yeah.
Zach is actually, he is a machine.
You actually kind of have to like tear him away from a particular biome, because if you don't, he'll just keep making it more.
I think the biggest limiting factor would actually be design, in how many plants we can actually fully develop.
Right. And a big piece of that is what can the alchemy system actually produce? What can the cooking system actually produce? Because those are the 2 that interface that way.
Right.
Baking too. That's just
baking too. I do have a follow-up question, actually, just because we're still at 135 and we're more than halfway down. Yeah. Will there, Maxwell, be some plants that serve very limited uses and might just exist for aesthetic purposes?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Yeah. A better way to put that might be to say that there will be plenty of plants out in the world that nobody yet knows how to use, right? Because don't forget, there's also the research system. And so, as an alchemist or a horticulturalist, as you begin to research these plants, you may realize that they are for lack of a better word, analogs to other plants and for their uses mechanically in the game. You might, for example, to make some sort of catalyst that makes the soil baser, you might find that there are 4 or 5 different plants that you can actually turn into a basic base.
Something like that.
Yeah.
A complex base.
Right. But yeah, so just because a thing feels like it has no purpose other than aesthetics now doesn't mean that that's going to be true in the long run. But that said, you guys, you're basically starting in the early medieval, late Bronze Age period, and so like most of those plants, you're not going to know what they do.
And that's a large part of it, I think. Don't be deceived by a seeming lack of usability.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Number 14. Redwood Dust asks, will we be able to force plants into shapes over time? Examples being bending trees into shapes, boxing fruit into squares, etc., whether for artistic purposes or construction purposes.
Nice. Hedge mages and stuff, or hedge mazes and stuff. Hedge
Or
mage
just
something else entirely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. That would be cool, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that would require a system that we don't really necessarily need to take the time to build, but B would have a huge impact on performance in the game as well.
Mm-hmm. And wouldn't necessarily bring any value other than aesthetic. I mean, you could argue these non-existing man-eating plants being shaped into like a corridor or something.
Right. I've grown my man-eating plant into a door.
All you do is walk down there. Yeah.
That's how the mimic happened. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool idea. I feel like technologically we're probably not there yet. Like the cost is too high. You can make it happen, but the cost is too high.
Yep. Worthosimo again asks, if you tame animals, then release them back into the wildlife to breed and improve the wild population, will they retain any traits from domestication? Or will they just behave like wild animals again?
Interesting. So once you've domesticated an animal, it's not going to go full wild again when you release it. That said, it's also probably not going to survive very long without help, right? I feel sad saying this, you'll have to excuse me. But I mean, if you train a dog, to expect that you're going to feed it every day at a particular time, and then you let that dog go, one of two things are going to happen. Either it is going to revert back to its feral behavior, and then it's going to forage and hunt.
Right.
Or
it's going to die.
It's going to starve to death because you never fed it. And both of those are possible, but I would argue that the second one is more likely given the way that the sort of hierarchy of needs system works and the priorities that a domesticated animal has versus a wild animal.
Right. So some animals that could never really be domesticated in the first place, or
right, release a trollmouth salamander from its cage and it's just going to run away and be a trollmouth salamander because you can't tame them. Right.
Likewise, there are certainly some creatures that would behave similarly regardless of captivity or not, and therefore would succeed.
Right.
Like, you release a cow into the wild, he'll graze.
Right. He'll be a cow.
He'll continue to be a cow, and likewise a horse will be a horse. And
but like if you trained a fox a lot and you let it go, it would probably live just fine because generally speaking, you're going to train a fox a lot to hunt pests down, right? So it'll be able to hunt and eat, but it's never going to not be that trained fox a lot anymore, right? That's never going away, and that's more what we're talking about. So we're discussing the mechanical implications of that fact.
Right. We have 20 minutes left, so we definitely can elaborate.
Yeah, it looks like we'll probably have some more time at the end of this too.
To maybe answer their questions.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we might as well move on. Number 16, Malaise asks, will some flora have mind-altering effects that change how the screen shows the world? As in going black, images that aren't there, or some such?
That's a great question. The short answer is absolutely yes. The long answer, though, is that a lot of times those effects are going to be accompanied with gameplay implications. So, a really good example of that might be, a plant that you would take for a vision quest or a spirit journey or something like that. Not that, I can think of an example of that offhand, but maybe if you hit me up later today, I'll come up with one. But if these, if these existed, when you took them, yeah, you're going to hallucinate, right? But that hallucination is going to be targeted, and it's going to follow along some sort of spiritual journey that is related to the various, systems of religion and destiny in our game. It's not just going to be, take this and get a aesthetic effect only. Everything is going to have implications. That's true if you drink too, right? Like, it's not just going to blur your screen or whatever. You're also going to have trouble with movement, but more importantly, it's also going to affect your health. You might actually shorten your life if you were to become an alcoholic, for example.
Say no to drugs, kids.
Pro tip.
Yeah, dare to be great. Who remembers dare?
But yeah, so the short answer is yes. The long answer is yeah, but it's not all for fun. It's actually pretty short still too.
It wasn't that long.
Yep. All right. Number 17.
Psychedelic pollen.
Grandmaster Sick says, will there be a way for players to track endangered flora and fauna? Or will it be more hands-on with, haven't seen any rabbits around, must be endangered?
The latter.
Yeah, definitely the latter.
There's not a website you can go to.
Right, unless, someone in the community or someone's in the community undertake a grand census of the flora and fauna of the world.
Right, and then puts it on a website that you can go to.
Right. But we're not going to do that for you. That's going to be something that you guys will have to do or not. You might literally just go, God, I can't catch anything out here anymore. And by then it might actually be too late to do anything about it.
Real quick, you want to move your phone here? Mine has 2%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, God damn it. See what you did?
I ruined everything. /stalled for time. Not that I planned that or anything.
There we go. Chronicles of Elyria.
Perfect. Subs are here.
That's great. I learned all about that. Thanks.
Okay. LOL. We've clearly missed out on a lot.
Damn it, I missed the memes.
Yeah, right? I do too. When are they coming back? Number 18 says, can we flame
tying creatures?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
you can.
However, you cannot tame flying creatures.
You cannot tame flying creatures. If yes, only to carry mail or big enough to carry goods and kippics or even normal mankind. Why don't you answer this one, Max?
Yeah, so you're probably never, excuse me, never is actually a really
never say never
strong word, but at least by the time the game launches, you're not going to be able to tame, say, a Terragwing. It's just not going to happen.
That will never happen, to be fair.
A much smaller bird, on the other hand,
sure,
that's probably fine.
Carrier pigeons?
Carrier pigeons, I suppose, are a possibility, though we have not actually implemented carrier pigeons yet, so I don't know that I have an answer for that one.
No. Falconry?
I see falconry is a really good example of a small bird that you should be able to train.
What about eaglery?
Oh, no, that's right out.
Right out?
Yeah. No,
I mean, they are...
Falcons all.
Falcons, okay. What about owls?
Okay, small raptors.
Okay, I believe owls are raptors, right?
Right. So are eagles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so jokes aside, you're never going to be able to tame a flying mount. You will probably be able to tame and train smaller flying creatures such as falcons or owls or carrier pigeons. At a bare minimum, you'll be able to catch and cage them. But we think you're going to be able to do more. That said, those systems are not actually implemented yet, so I don't want to make any sort of guarantee.
No guarantees. It's interesting to think about, though. I mean, I think it would be interesting to have a carrier pigeon system, or a similar. Well, yes, a carrier pigeon system.
Yeah.
Follow-up question: little bit of an alteration of that. Carrier, other type of animal, land mammal. Land vertebrate.
Interesting.
Land reptile.
Otter bear delivery. Left it.
Yeah.
Left it or lug it. Yeah.
I believe I've even seen concept art, not ours, but of the otter bear with the classic
Right.
What dog is that?
The Saint Bernard cask.
Saint Bernard cask, which What is the theory that it supposedly carries alcohol, but it's actually medicine?
Yeah, it's just so that it would keep you warm in the cold or something.
Yeah. Saint Bernards are cool.
I agree.
Number 19. Immaculate Deception. One Maculate Deception
One maculate deception.
asks, we saw insect breeding listed for the dross in the write-up. Is this still something that is planned for, and if so, just how big will some of the largest of these insects be? Interesting. Well, insect breeding at the very least extends to bees, because we have bees. Likewise, things like silkworms.
Yep, I was going to say there's the Kippic silk harvest.
And various smaller insects that might provide things like venom or dyes.
Yep, or
because
like the materials for shellac.
Well, yeah, exactly. Those are all likely to be possible because it's interesting. As for the size of insects in general, not the insects that you could breed, but the size of insects in the world that you might encounter, you could potentially encounter some fairly large insects.
Absolutely. Like, monstrously large.
Monstrously large. Large enough that you would want to hide your cat. Hide your kid, hides your wives.
Large enough that the physicists among you will be like, how much oxygen is in this planet anyway?
Yes.
You know?
And the answer to that is no one knows. They don't have the measurement tools.
They don't know what that is yet.
Oxygen, but pretty big. We are nearing our last question, and by that I mean we are at our last question.
Dun, dun, dun. With 13 minutes to go.
With 13 minutes to go. So what do you? Well, we could just answer this and then respond to chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we could certainly elaborate on other things. Number 21 or number 20. Drun Redforge asks, in Ark, if you come across a predator that is attacking another animal, you can run right by them so long as you don't get closer than its target and not be attacked. Is this the same for COE? Will predators completely ignore you, or will they be aware of you and either A, attack you if you're deemed to be an easier target than the current target regardless of distance, or B, try to put as much distance between itself and you while still attacking its target to flee if you get too close, if it has deemed you as a large threat.
So that's actually a pretty cool question.
Or a threat, just in general. A small threat.
One of the reasons I like this question is because it allows us to talk a little bit about the AI, which is
creature behaviors.
Yeah, which is something we don't really talk about much, just because it takes a lot of work, and we're not really there yet. But so one of the things that we have said about our creatures is that they follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which means first they try to secure food and shelter, then they try to secure companionship and reproduction, right? And I think that's the end of the pyramid for animals, if I recall correctly.
For Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
It's the first 3 steps.
It's water, food, and shelter.
Right, plus then companionship and reproduction.
Well, companionship's not...
It's really reproduction.
It's reproduction, yeah.
So, with those 3 needs, you actually have a range of behaviors that you can implement, because you can decide how much each of those steps in the pyramid really matter to each individual type of creature. So, for example, a creature that values safety and shelter more than it values, say, securing food for its hunt may run when they see you, and they'll worry about finding another target later. On the other hand, where that's reversed, they may evaluate that you are an easier feast than the target they were going after,
Sure.
and they may instead go after you.
Sure.
Right, but likewise, a third option where they completely ignore you is on the table, and kind of anything in between those on the spectrum, because it's all about how you set those various needs, and then they're going to respond appropriately.
I'd say in general, you'd have to make yourself pretty obviously known, like running in front of a predator-prey hunt going on.
Right, or like right in the middle of it somehow.
Because, it's going to take a lot for an animal to reprioritize completely. And, in the middle of a hunt, like, given a few seconds, animals aren't necessarily going to make those kinds of like complex
Right.
decisions, or like
they're not people.
yeah, they're not going to be able to
Right.
necessarily weigh the pros and cons and like completely reprioritize. They're not,
Right.
you know, they're not Terminator.
In our AI model, people have more rungs on that same hierarchy of needs, but they also have this personality profile thing, the matrix, the ocean matrix, which also changes how they might evaluate a threat or something coming into their scene. And so you get a lot more variance out of people than you will out of necessarily individual animals. But this doesn't mean that there isn't going to be any variance at all. And the situation itself makes a big difference. So, like for example, in the lore story that were released this morning, there's a moment where some hunters are going after a bear, and another group of hunters manages to get behind that bear, mainly because that bear was so focused on the targets in front of it that it never even thought to check behind it, and so it just didn't see it. That's a really good example. That same bear, in a situation where it didn't really evaluate the first group of hunters as a threat, might have been way more ready to accept that there was something behind it and react accordingly. It really all depends on the circumstances and the creature's hierarchy of needs and priorities.
Right. Okay. We've answered the 20 questions.
Yep, and we have 9 minutes left, so let's pick some questions.
Serp, do you have any questions?
Caspian asked about you.
Caspian asked about my tattoos.
Oh yeah, that's right. Those are new, aren't they?
They are new.
Okay, what can you tell us about the height differential and its effect on flora and fauna? Will the base of a mountain, every 50 meters or so, the top and the east and west faces have different life on them?
I mean, those sorts of variations as a result of exposure and altitude are going to be simulated to some degree, if only for the sake of having variation amongst an environment. But
right. Well, and there is environmental cues to why plants thrive and don't. So,
right.
For example, mountains will have a tree line because there'll be a point where in conditions above a certain altitude just make it impossible for trees to grow. So the coarse answer to your question is absolutely there will be differences.
Right.
The more nuanced answer is
Right.
the biome has a set of plants in it, and those plants are going to grow within that biome where the conditions are right for them to grow.
Right.
So you will get these sort of emergent sort of clustering, right? You'll find, you know, the flowers in the taiga are always where there's sun because they require sun to grow.
Right.
Or you'll find that, you know, like I was saying earlier, that trees just can't grow above a particular altitude. Or, for that matter, one side of a mountain may have a type of trees that just don't make it around to the other side because the conditions are different. There's not enough moisture on the other side because you're in the rain shadow.
Right. The granularity is not necessarily 50 meters, though.
Right. Yeah, it's actually not like that at all. It's in fact more about parcels and plots, I guess is a better way to put it.
Can we make a wall out of trees by planting them in certain positions instead of shaping them?
Sure.
I mean,
I don't see why not.
what
I mean, it probably won't be impenetrable. The trees won't grow if they're too close together, but
Right.
what would be the difference between common, uncommon, and rare plants, animals bought prior to launch? I believe.
That's going to be quality.
I think he answered that question right above.
That's going to be quality and strain.
Yeah, I think Jeremy answered that question right there.
Oh,
Rare
yep, there you
plants,
go.
typically,
Yep.
Yeah. Will we be able to hybridize plants? A process that has brought us in the real world.
Yeah, grafting. and
Plumcots,
crossbreeding.
tangelos, blood limes, and tayberries. Never heard of plumcots, but tangelos. That's cool.
Yeah. I can see what a plumcot is, though. That sounds actually pretty yummy.
Yeah.
The long answer is probably, but the short answer is no.
You got interesting.
Right. So, as a farmer, as a horticulturalist, you have access to research just like any other of the various skills out there that allow crafting and creation. So, in theory, you could research towards one of those hybrids, and we could then add that hybrid to the game. However, that hybrid would have to exist before you would start seeing it in the world. We would have to create it. It's not going to be procedurally or organically just emerge out of the conditions of the game. So you'll have to use a discrete mechanic like research.
Very important question. What kind of music would you suggest to put some plants in the mood to cross some genes, Snipe? Please.
Definitely some like 30s era or 40s era sultry jazz.
No Barry White?
Oh, well, certainly.
Barry White's just a shoo-in, yeah, too easy. Question.
But I was thinking something tinged with cigarette smoke and whiskey.
Okay,
You know?
I like it. That's classy. That's, can fauna be bred to a point where impurities in the blood lines exist due to inbreeding, i.e., a need to always introduce new genetics that's stable to avoid these genetic? So, can we
Yeah, will there be
a
inbreeding?
pit bull or something?
Right. So, in theory, the wrong combinations of genes, of traits, could absolutely cause, some sort of, I don't want to say mutation, that's not the right word, but might cause some sort of what you would consider a defect. That
Right.
said, realistically, that's probably not going to happen all that often with animals. It might not even happen with people.
I'd like it to, though. I think it'd be interesting, but...
The system does technically allow for it, though.
Yeah. Is there a possibility to be something similar to a vet in the game, using different plants, herbs, fauna, and so on?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Animal husbandry is more broadly defined in our game as the care of animals, not just the breeding of animals. And so there actually is a skill dedicated to what you're talking about. And that will cross over with pharmacology or alchemy as necessary.
Small question about the AI. I assume animals won't just walk into towns, be that elks or wolves that are looking for prey. So, question: what is determining that for AI? Many humans, a lot of noise. Maybe smaller towns, hamlets are vulnerable to wild animal attacks. I'd say,
Yeah,
to all of that.
all of the above. Yeah, absolutely.
Question: I want to fight. No, I'm gonna skip that question. For the swamp biome, will there be different crop growing methods? For example, rice paddies.
Yes.
Yes. More information on dragons, please. No.
No.
Will wind be implemented? Will it change direction and strength?
Yeah, so-
not probably to that degree. But.
Yeah, we're short answer, yes. There is going to be something akin to wind. We're going to track air pressure, actually, specifically, and a differential in air pressure between one region and another should create wind. Whether or not that's going to have a mechanical effect beyond, rustling trees and stuff and moving weather systems, I'm not entirely certain yet, and so I don't really want to say more.
Are there sharks? Yeah, of course. What else would you have people walk the plank into? Some water? And you stay there. I'm gonna get back on the boat. No, you don't. You let
Stop
go.
that. Let go.
Hit him with an oar. I'm not letting go. Will some animals be smarter, more complex OPC scripts, for instance? Crows are insanely smart comparatively. Yeah.
It's true.
Yes. Some animals will have a more complex, nuanced
Yeah,
behaviors.
otter bears are more intelligent than your average bear, for example.
Right.
Plus they have hands.
Yeah. I mean, I would say anything that is domesticatable is going to be more advanced.
Right. Now, are we going to have, snowboarding crows?
That sounds great, but
Maybe. I mean, they do in real life, but
is they really?
yeah, they'll grab like bottle caps and stuff and snowboard down roofs.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, crows really are insanely smart.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Oh yeah, they'll drop. Well, I think we all know they drop pebbles into a glass of water that has water, but not tall enough for them to actually reach to, and they'll keep dropping
Yeah, to displace the water.
to displace the water and cause it to rise, so that they can actually. They're very smart. And can we see Sozo's ink or get a picture after the Q&A?
We are just about out of time, so that would be perfect.
To show my ink.
Yeah, show off, man.
Okay, sure. This is my left hand, and this is my right hand. So they're just two matching tattoos.
So what do they mean?
They represent the concept of order and chaos, and the kinds of concepts that those carry. Like order is not simply order; it is also law and structure and tradition. Chaos is not simply chaos, but it's also creation and birth and creativity. And ultimately,
ultimately you need both of them. Now I'm not a twofold queen server, but I'm a big fan of the dross. I've always said that. Okay, last time. Can you contaminate water source indirectly, like finding poisonous plants near rivers and natural wells?
Maybe.
Maybe, it's interesting. I mean, it certainly happened in the plague.
Yep,
I mean,
exactly. All right, we are at our limit. We have hit our time frame. So I think that's it for questions.
Yeah, but thank you so much for
It's
coming.
too bad. I would have liked to have answered that one.
Yeah, ooh, that was a good one.
yeah.
Oh, I had so much to say on that one.
Next time, guys.
That's a
All
shame.
right.
But it was a lot of fun. This has been Sozo and Maxwell. Maxwell and Sozo.
We will see you later,
We'll
guys.
see you next time.
Thanks
yeah.
for hanging out.